Whether you play the weird route or not, there's an inherent dose of horror to the world of Deltarune that's impossible to ignore. And that's even if you don't count our pumpkin-headed friend Jackenstein, or whenever Chris decides to handle things by being a true edgelord in ways that are painfully familiar to me as someone who unironically wore a trilby in their youth, and who tries very hard to not be haunted by that forever. As such, it's no surprise that there's a wealth of Deltarune and Undertale fangames building on the prime potential for terrifying moments and troubling implications that have been built up throughout the course of these games. Which makes sense, because once you've seen the amalgams in Undertale, it's low-key impossible not to classify it as at least a light horror game, even if it's one that's not afraid to be goofy at times too. Perhaps one of the most interesting of these fangames is also one of the newest, as Lost Deltarune released at the very start of May 2026, promising a story that followed on from the current as-of-yet unseen ending of the main official game. Given the level of interest in, and speculation around, how exactly Deltarune will end, and what the various mysteries we've had set up will look like when they're answered, be that the matter of who the knight is, or to what degree the prophecy of Deltarune will be upheld in the game's various paths, Lost Deltarune exploring the aftermath of a theoretical bad ending to the game is a really fun way to delve into this topic, since it's able to build mysteries around its own Deltarune finale, and the events that led to the grim but undeniably fascinating nightmare scenario we find ourselves in within this suitably spooky adventure. The thing I like most about Lost Deltarune is the way it's able to follow the show-don't-tell approach that the main game takes with some of its most interesting story teases and implications. Lost Deltarune's very first scene is a prime example of this, since it opens with us meeting Chris, but a Chris who has a more conventional spelling, immediately letting us know something is afoot, and then takes us to a version of the Dreamer family home that similarly feels different. It's hard to not notice that the formerly much larger house is now a fraction of its prior size, which immediately provides another point of bamboozlement that serves as a clue for what's to come. After discovering we've covertly become BFFs with Monster Kid in between the events of Deltarune and its lost sequel, which immediately raises more red flags, since firstly, where is Susie? And secondly because, oh god, it's a horror game that has the most innocent and nice character in the franchise, so we know they're doomed, we enter Chris's hometown, which is, to put it nicely, in absolute bits. It's clear from a lot of the dialogue from the remaining townsfolk that this twee hometown is currently more resembling a cracker post-blender than a vibrant, healthy community, making it as clear as possible that something went wrong in Chris, Susie and Ralsei's efforts to protect the world. It's pretty explicitly suggested that Asgore is dead, and it doesn't exactly look like the rest of the missing characters we can't see here are off having a fun beach party just off screen either. Which subsequently makes the news that we're heading off to the ominous bunker where we know something awful went down, with the game's most darling, wide-eyed, whimsical pal, a matter that seems pretty fraught from the start. This may well just be me being way too much of a nerd for Deltarune, but the first thing that made me genuinely begin to feel a little creeped out, as silly as this may sound, is the fact you quickly realise that the area the bunker is located in has changed place. While Chris's house could have been the subject of some questionable DIY project, changing the location of an underground bunker is a substantially more impossible seeming process. So it's harder to ignore that whatever has happened has changed the basic setup of reality as we knew it. Interestingly, when you get a little closer to the bunker, you then get trapped into a loop wherein you can't return to the town, but rather can only continue on forward to the bunker. And to our first of many, many realistic images added into the game to provide a little extra surreal horror touch in the form of the bench, which actually put the fear of God in me, if only because I immediately knew this would not be the last realistic photo-style image to appear in this horror game, and that there would no doubt be some that were significantly more horror-esque than a bench. And oh boy, was I right about that the whole time. Troublingly, even though Chris arranges to meet the monster child at the bunker, our dear lizard friend is nowhere to be seen, meaning there's nothing for it but to launch ourselves into the abyss, which is immediately revealed to be at least kind of a mistake given the ominous looming form we see waiting for us in the very first second the doors open for us. Just in case that wasn't enough to clue us in that the horror aspects of the game are about to kick off in full force, we then get some text from an initially ambiguous narrator letting us know we've been here again, and again, and again, and then confirm who is speaking via one of the most harrowing versions of Undertale Mystery Man Gaster I've seen in all my days. I do not know why this bothered me so much the first time around, other than the fact that, like pretty much everyone who's been terminally online from a young age, I have a light obsession with Undertale and Deltarune that only Toby Fox, God, or my therapist could properly explain. But rest assured that by the time a flashing Gaster promised to show us the gravity of the situation, I was rustled enough to genuinely jump at the game's map, which we are then given, and at an apple pie, so we're off to a great start. True to form, I accidentally stumble upon the gateway to the secret ending here, and while I don't know that yet, I become convinced I must have given the wrong answer to get into this exclusive area, letting us find out that neither answer you can give here can let you into this tantalising gate quite yet, though there'll be much more to say on that later. Then, we get no-scoped across the room by a frog, just to balance things out. This takes us into the first fight of Lost Deltarune, and a chance for me to big up one of its coolest aspects, which is how the battles manage to balance feeling like they would fit perfectly into Deltarune or Undertale, and still also feel unsettling and like you can never be sure of when some straight-up horror movie shenanigans are about to take place. Okay, so hugging a frog that's mid-battle with you until it chills out and becomes your pal maybe isn't the height of horror here, but given we know what the frogs of this world should roughly look like, seeing this creepy grayscale iteration with seemingly extra eyes that doesn't appear to be able to speak is yet another telltale sign that something has gone very wrong in this world, without staying at horror level 100 from the game's first seconds onward. Indeed, things get a lot more chill here for a good few minutes. We meet a character named Eva who says they can transform into many shapes, but like to take a cat form. A detail that anyone who knows about Deltarune and Friend no doubt had the exact same double-take reaction to that I did, and learn that our dear pal Monster Kid has likely been taken by someone Eva refers to as she in block capitals, which reduces the chances of their survival down to single digits from then and there. However, our new feline comrade offers to help us out for the low price of helping them find 4 key fragments, which some eagle-eyed viewers may have already noticed aligns with the 4 yellow dots that naturally drew your attention on the map. As such, we begin our noble quest, armed with a major amount of suspicion about whether obtaining a key for Eva is going to end well. But we've not got long to think about that, as we're quickly accosted by more frogs and harrowing, anxiety-ridden Cyclops creatures through the game's first area, which is aptly summed up by the fight kicking off with the line, "Things just keep getting worse." And our reward for handling them is a suitably ominous smog-infested room, and the first boss fight of the game, who disguises themselves as a save point and then transforms into battle mode when you try to use it, which is a pretty fun gimmick, I won't lie. Metonymy introduces us to a consistent theme over the course of the game's 4 keyholder bosses, which is that each of these entities are children of the Holy Vessel, which initially just seems like fun, if slightly edgy flavor text to let you know you're in a boss fight, but which becomes far more interesting later on with the reveal of the fan game's big secret boss. Metonymy is also interesting in that we get a sort of Sans-esque fight against them, perhaps because of the nature of them being an experiment, or perhaps because of the natural link between bones and dogs. Either way, as someone who never worked up the nerve to break my morals and do the Undertale genocide route to duke it out with Sans, this was a pretty neat fight overall, and a nice way to connect Deltarune and Undertale through the form of a funky little battle. After this, the hub area gets filled up with some ghostly-looking NPCs, who confirm that, yes, things are mad not good here, and unlock the first batch of many journal entries found within the game, because what good horror game is complete without a tasty journal entry or two? I believe we're to understand that these journal entries are from Gaster, given his placement in the game, but I'm also not 100% on this, so please comment if I've added 2 and 2 and gotten 200 here. The writer of the journals starts off by confirming they came to the world of Deltarune from a different one, and decided to try and fix things and revert the world to the one they knew via using their scientific know-how to test the areas between dimensions, only for them to meet an entity living in this space instead. A lot of things happen very quickly in the next area after this revelation. We fight Frog Fight 3, Rise of the Revenge of the Frog. We see what may have happened to Birdly, and if so, oh god, I'm so sorry for that poor little nerd. And we see evidence that the Deltarune bunker is actually the true laboratory from Undertale, because I would recognise that haunted-ass robot from space if I needed to, even with a fun new pink coat of paint on it, and a box puzzle in front of it that lets it judge you for screwing up a basic puzzle within its creepy eye shot. Much like Metonymy's boss area, Our reward for scarpering through the DT extraction machine's wacky box and sad bird warehouse is that we're treated to an area that is much more unsettling, because a dark hallway full of mirrors that have just enough room to show you the area behind you are the horror equivalent of a 10-course buffet. Despite knowing what was inevitably set to come, my rabbit on Red Bull-like constitution meant I still inevitably jumped at the reveal of the next boss lurking in one of the mirrors. Because of course they were. The rake offers us a little bit of free therapy, which is very nice for a character I believe is inspired by a classic creepypasta, and a pretty easy fight, all things considered. Maybe they felt bad about making me jump, I don't know. Though the 700 knives thrown our way certainly suggests not. Though our reward of another key fragment is to be expected, the lore takes a somewhat unexpected turn here, with it also revealing the writer of the journal entries made a deal with the as-of-yet unnamed entity, which shows how Lost Deltarune's version of events mirrors Undertale even more, since said deal requires the sacrifice of one soul to return the journal's creator back to the world they came from and remember. This offer is initially rejected, of course, but I don't think we got to messed up deer statues and whatever this is, because everyone had a merry, jolly tea party, so, you know. Our journey for the third key is distracted by whatever the Sam hell this thing is. I've played, I believe, every part of the game, and I still don't know, though it haunts my goddamn dreams, and by a Digimon-esque looking bug you can neutralise by ripping its arms off. Indeed, a lot of the ways you can spare enemies in the game are notably less forgiving than in the majority of Deltarune or Undertale themselves, which I think works well to add a game mechanic that communicates how something is wrong, and how Chris with a C seems a little off, given their apparently merciful options also contain a lot of decidedly less than merciful stuff. That said, maybe most people would lose their bananas if they ended up in a creepy hallway with a bunch of moving hands on distended long limbs, and then had to face off against a big old bug dude, since it's not exactly an everyday experience. Though it seems for a moment that the angry Beedrill we face at the end of the maze of questionable hands might have acted as a baby boss fight of sorts, since the key is right there, to no surprise it's another fake out, as picking up the item takes you into your inventory, wherein you initially get a neat little surprise where the inventory tells you the boss is behind you, and then Susie appears, sat down, and crying for help. On the plus side, it's later revealed the game hasn't retconned Susie's brash and beloved personality and made her a meek and mild character who's also a funky shade of green. On the downside, this is revealed via one of the creepiest moments in the game, or any pixel horror game I've played, since it becomes clear that, no, this definitely isn't Susie, when a different creature bursts out of her head, revealing that instead of a potentially zombified dino girl, we've been dealing with a mimic, who has either replicated her form, or, as the later sprite suggests, may have been piloting what remained of Susie instead. I'm not sure what's worse, so you can choose on that one. This kicks off a really fun battle concept that I wish I'd gotten to mess around with more, where you obtain a parry mechanic that you use to parry a certain number of attacks in the arena in order to pass that phase of the fight. It looks pretty trippy, but it ends up feeling like a fun combo of the Muffet fight in Undertale, and the parry moments you can get in, spoiler warning here, the secret fight with Gerson in Deltarune Chapter 4. That said, I only realised how much I enjoyed it a little while afterward, since I was taken aback enough by the whole "oh hi Susie, oh god Susie no" moment, that I genuinely didn't understand how the parry worked for a troubling amount of time. What I consider the main crux of the plot is revealed after this boss fight, as we learn from the journals that its author, faced with the knowledge they gained about the roaring, and with the growing realisation that reality would not remain stable even if they didn't sacrifice anyone, let the dear girl be taken, explaining Dess's disappearance in Deltarune as being due to her being the subject of this sacrifice, though the writer is devastated to offer Dess up only to discover the creature from between worlds doesn't intend to take them back to their home universe. Worse yet, Dess's soul isn't simply taken from this reality, with the fragments of her that remained becoming deeply warped, meaning things have just become doubly messed up. The third and penultimate key we unlock here also means the glitched area becomes accessible to us, since the bouncers either decided we're chill, or faced a terrible fate. Or both, if they were really lucky. Herein lies the biggest curveball of the entire game. And no, that's not the cool glitchy textures that are oddly hypnotising, but rather the reveal that, surprise, there's a full Five Nights at Freddy's style mini-fan game within the Deltarune fan game, like some sort of beautiful nightmare video game inception. Only, in some ways it's even more custom built to make you uncomfortable, since it plops you in a mysterious hallway, hands you a torch with extremely limited charge, tells you to shine it when you hear footsteps, and leaves you to think about all your life decisions that have led you up until this point. I actually don't think you can win this section of the game, so to speak, as you inevitably end up getting another fun pixel jump scare. Said fun pixel jump scare becomes less fun very, very quickly, as while some of you may have been able to spot similarities between the bone-esque shape of the creature's face and someone else that we know, some others, like myself, may have a slower, more gradual realization that the game's ending kicks off at this point by resolving one of its earliest plot points, through showing you what happened to the plucky little yellow monster whose courage led you into the bunker in the first place. Monster Kid confirms that they died in the bunker, with their mention of the cold providing a pretty big clue as to who may have been behind their fate, and recruits you for the mission of dealing with their killer. I'm not sure if it says more about the game or me that this little MS Paint-esque moment here genuinely got me a little bit in the feels, as the timeline of events seems to suggest that Monster Kid may have been the only friend this version of Chris ever had, and the style of everything adds a childlike, innocent nature to the otherwise bleak moment of you finishing off Chris's only companion so you can start putting things right. Of course, this provides the final key fragment and some of the final journal entries in the game, which unveil that Dess's soul has been stealing children from the town, and their souls have also gotten stuck here, much in the way we saw with Monster Kid. While even the journal writer expresses being scared at what all of this means, it's not all bad. Like, hey, it's those deer statues again. Those were fun at the start of the game, and oh no, it's time to meet Des. Funnily enough, while the more detailed version of Dess's zombie form is more intricate, I think the simplified pixel version hits a lot harder. As firstly, it does a really good job of suggesting what Des did look like, and what the transformation has done to her, and secondly, well, I mean, just look at that. That's a true horror monster, alright? And the Knight is a character from Bluey in comparison. Chris with a C does the one last same maneuver they take on in the entire game and flees the scene, and gets to meet the last collection of journal entries, wherein we learn their author decided to try and atone for their involvement in Dess's fate by going to try and put her to rest, which appears to have gone about as well as could be expected, all things considered. From here, there are two possible endings. The first is unsurprisingly also the most straightforward, as it simply involves continuing onward and facing what remains of Des, this time with some clear emotion evident in Chris with a C, possibly because they also read the final journal entry, and saw the author name-drop Deltarune, and proclaim Des is their Deltarune as their crowning accomplishment, which feels pretty grim, to say the least. It is a slight tragedy this fight isn't harder given how intense the setup for it is, and one of the few points of critique I've seen about this game reflect a similar perspective, since the fan game tends to stay away from being too difficult throughout. But there are some really neat attacks set up here, and a lot of effort clearly went in to make Dess's attacks feel like they mirror her sister Noelle's in some ways, with some necessary tweaks so you feel like this is a corrupted Des, and not just Noelle's sister in a bad mood after playing peekaboo for a number of years with the nearby townspeople. While you can seemingly beat Des, she only appears to get more consumed with hatred during the fight, and the final dialogue after the fight confirms this, with an omnipotent narrator telling us, relatively politely, that, to be frank, we screwed everything up. However, if there's one thing Undertale and Deltarune reward, it's determination and being downright stubborn, which means it makes a lot of sense that the second, and sort of true ending, so to speak, can only be accessed by now launching the game again, and learning from a suspiciously friend-shaped creature that there's a document in the game's files that can help you, allowing you to find the secret code for that weird room I mentioned all the way back in the beginning of the video. Well, alright, you could have read it early like a nerd, but we're asked very nicely not to by some of the other files. And frankly, you could ask me very nicely to jump into a pit of boiling lava, and I'd still find it basically impossible to not. I do think the build-up here makes the reveal of the secret area, boss, and ending all the more impactful though, as we get to rock up to what is in effect Friend's secret base, wherein you find a bunch of failed versions of Chris with a C, because, surprise, we're like the 100th go, it looks like, given the jigsaw collection of prior vessels that didn't quite get as lucky that we see here. We also get fun confirmation that Chris with a C is very much not Deltarune's Chris with a K, but rather another vessel Friend placed into the world after the events of Deltarune closed with Susie, Chris and Ralsei managing to seal all the darkness out of this reality, but seemingly creating instability in the universe by undoing the cosmic balance between dark and light, and also creating a scenario where nobody was there to really notice Chris being replaced with a similar alter ego. As such, it's perhaps no surprise that the secret boss fight is against the feline orchestrator of all of this turmoil, with Friend also appearing to confirm that they were indeed the entity that the author of Lost Deltarune's journals met all that time ago. Friend's motivations are revealed during this section as well, and while for a moment it appears as though we may have misjudged the cat, and that their intention is to right the balance of light and dark, it's quickly revealed Friend's plan for reharmonization is actually to make it so every world is overtaken by darkness, and that, since Chris is an integral part of said plans, we have to duke it out for the fate of the rest of the universe. This is a really cool fight, but arguably its best strength is the personality Friend gets in this relatively short climactic battle. After all, it's hard to not love to hate the critter after they deliver lines like, "What's but a couple pointless children," in reference to its sacrifice of some of the kids of your hometown, and a boss turning around after you beat it to say, "My health is 0?" and admonish you for reducing it down to that level is legitimately so funny and fitting for the series. I'm surprised I don't think it's a gimmick that any of the official games have used, though I'd be seriously happy to learn I'm wrong if anyone knows otherwise. Friend's demise comes with a side serving of changing the course of fate, as the memo shard we get from fighting them lets this version of the battle against Des go decidedly different. While the text initially insists she's gone, and Des repeats her original battle dialogue, where she confesses she misses the original Chris, and she misses her family too, even if she no longer remembers what they look like, we have an at least partial cure for that, even if we can't, just nip down to her family's house with her. The memo shard isn't able to unzombie Des, but it does lead to a way less tragic ending for the character, wherein we're able to restore Des's memory of her beloved sister, and learn that Des's motivations haven't been as awful as they seemed in at least one major way, since it's strongly implied her soul never fully gave out because she was desperate to reunite with Noelle. This is a particularly neat segment because it uses a part of the extended Deltarune lore that even some people who've played the game won't be familiar with. Namely, a segment of hidden text from one of the Deltarune newsletters you can get, where Noelle talks about making snow angels with Des, and about Des helping her and letting Noelle win every time. As such, it's a really fitting choice, and one that adds a clever extra edge to this dramatic finale, since it contains one of the few actual lines of dialogue we canonically have Des saying in Deltarune itself, meaning it's one of the more concrete points of her character to draw from for this ending. Having had her memories restored to her, Des is able to let go and pass on, and Chris with a C is able to finally exit this goddamn bunker after 2 hours, carrying only a whole bag of fresh trauma with them. Fittingly, Lost Deltarune ends with one final twist, and one final reference to Undertale, as we cut to an asleep Chris and either the undead monster kid or Gaster slowly creeping up to them, suggesting a grim fate may be the ultimate outcome of the secret ending, only for them to instead pull the covers up for our sleeping protagonist to help them slumber soundly, in a moment that almost perfectly mirrors the friendly ghosty you meet when snoozing in Undertale's secret lab as Frisk. I'll be honest, it's the cutest darn ending I've ever seen in what is effectively a horror game, but it's one that feels quite fitting for the tone Lost Deltarune aims for and hits, since, while things are very clearly a long way from perfect, and there's still a lot of turmoil the ending doesn't fix, it does end on a note that things can get better, so long as people choose to look out for one another where they can. And that's Lost Deltarune. I'll be honest, I actually didn't plan to make a video on this fangame, since I've always been nervous to talk about Deltarune lore, in case I've gotten the wrong end of any proverbial sticks. But I was so charmed by Lost Deltarune after playing it through that I couldn't help but make something talking about its story, and about how downright fresh and funky some of the layered references to Deltarune and Undertale in it are. You can really tell the game was made by someone who genuinely loves the series, and as someone who also seriously does, it's impossible to not finish it with a bit of a grin on your face, even if you're a scaredy cat who may have a permanent light phobia of deer statues, like me. If you watched all the way to the end of this video, As always, I want to say a huge thanks. The wider Undertale series means a whole lot to me, but I've never actually really talked about it out loud before, for some reason. So getting to blab on about it via talking about this spooky but often heartwarming fan game for like 5,000 words has felt pretty special. Merci for listening to me blab on about how easily jump scared I am, and hope you have a good morning, eve, or night when you hear this. And that any spirits you encounter only wish to help you get your duvet more comfy for you. Chris with the C style.